Decoded.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Book Decoded.
Yes, welcome back.
Today, we are going to be talking about relationships.
Ooh, relationships.
And, honestly, this is something that I feel like we all could use a little bit of help with sometimes.
Right, yeah, for sure.
So today, we're diving into The Missing Piece by Stacey Martino. And it's a really interesting look at how one person can actually transform a whole relationship.
Okay, just one person.
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's a big claim.
It is a big claim. And I think a lot of us, we kind of get stuck in this pattern in our relationships where it's like we're waiting for the other person to change.
Yeah, you're just waiting for them to see your side of things.
Exactly. And this book is kind of flipping that script and saying, okay, well, what if you actually had more power than you thought to shift those dynamics?
Interesting. So it's more about taking personal responsibility.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it. And the book starts by talking about this concept of demand relationship, which sounds a little intense.
Yeah, demand relationship, it does sound a little harsh.
It does,
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily about being like a demanding person in like a bossy way.
Okay, so it's more nuanced than that.
It is. It's more about those subtle ways that we try to control or influence other people to get what we want in a relationship.
Oh, so like even things you think are like for their benefit or the good of the relationship.
Exactly. Things like, trying to please someone, hoping they'll do the same for you, or,
Yeah.
kind of pushing a little to get your point across.
Right, or even giving unsolicited advice sometimes.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Unsolicited advice all the time. And the book says that, this might have seemed to work in the past, like in more traditional relationship structures.
Right, like where there were more defined roles.
Right. But nowadays, people are a lot more empowered to like assert their own needs and their own boundaries.
All right, everyone wants to be heard.
Exactly. And so when we hit that point of like, okay, this isn't working anymore, the book calls that the threshold. And that's when things can really start to fall apart.
So the relationship reaches a breaking point.
Yeah. And I think we've all probably been there at some point or another.
Oh, yeah, definitely been there.
And the book really emphasizes how this demand relationship often leads to blame.
Oh, yeah, blame. That's the relationship killer.
It is, because it's like we get so stuck in this cycle of pointing fingers.
It's like, whose fault is it?
Exactly. And then we never actually solve the real problem.
Right, because you're so busy trying to prove you're right.
And, everyone's focused on being right instead of being connected.
Exactly. So how do we break out of this cycle? What does the book say?
So that's where relationship development comes in.
Okay, relationship development. So this is the alternative.
Yes. And it's not therapy. It's not counseling. It's really presented as a set of skills that you can learn and practice.
Okay, so like you're developing your relationship muscles.
Exactly. And the really exciting part is that it only takes one person to start using these skills to see positive change.
Okay, so you're not waiting for the other person to change.
Well, you take the lead.
I like that.
And the book has this great analogy about a dog trainer.
Okay, a dog trainer.
Yeah, so the author was having trouble with her dog jumping on guests, and so she got a dog trainer.
Right, makes sense.
And she was expecting the trainer to, like, work with the dog directly.
To train the dog.
But instead the trainer said, no, your dog already knows how to sit. Your dog already knows how to not jump.
Okay.
My job is to train you how to communicate with your dog effectively so that you can get those desired behaviors.
Wow, I love that.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's like a total perspective shift.
And the book is saying it's the same with our human relationships.
Yeah, because we're all kind of like dogs in a way.
In a way, right? We have our own little quirks and our own ways of communicating.
Our language.
Exactly. And so often the problem isn't that our partner is like inherently difficult.
Right. They're not a bad dog.
They're not a bad dog. They just haven't been taught the right way to sit.
Exactly.
It's about understanding their wiring.
Yeah, they're wiring. So what's next?
So then the book dives into this concept of the predictable pattern loop, which they also sometimes call the invisible loop.
Okay, predictable pattern loop, invisible loop. What is that?
So this is basically the idea that in a lot of our conflicts, there's this pattern that happens where one person does something that triggers a reaction in the other person.
Okay, so it's a cycle.
It is a cycle. And the problem is we often only see the reaction. We don't see our own part in starting the cycle.
Oh, like we're blind to our own triggers.
Exactly. And so we get stuck fighting the reaction.
Right. Like, why are you always so defensive?
Yes, exactly. And we never stop to think, well, what am I doing that might be contributing to this?
Right. So it's about taking a step back and seeing the bigger picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And recognizing that if we change our input, we can change the output.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this leads us to one of the most important ideas in the book, which is personal responsibility.
Okay, personal responsibility. Now, this can be a tricky one.
It can be because people hear that and they think, oh, so it's my fault.
Yeah, like I'm to blame for everything.
Exactly. And the book is very clear that it's not about blame.
Okay, good.
It's about taking ownership of solving the problem.
So not about fault, but about action.
Yes, it's about saying, okay, this isn't working. What can I do differently to make things better?
I see. And that's empowering.
It is, because it puts you back in control.
You're not just a victim of circumstance.
Exactly. And there's this really great example in the book about a woman named Jasmine and her daughter.
Okay, what happened?
So Jasmine's daughter was at camp, and they were supposed to do tie-dye shirts.
Fun.
Yes. But for whatever reason, the camp didn't end up doing it.
Yeah.
And so Jasmine's daughter was really disappointed.
I can imagine.
And so a lot of parents in that situation might get upset with the camp director.
Right, call him up, complain.
But Jasmine didn't do that.
Well, what you do?
She just told her daughter, you know what? I'll get you the tie-dye shirts. We'll do it ourselves.
That's nice of her.
It is. And it shows that she took personal responsibility for her daughter's happiness.
Right, she didn't wait for the camp to fix it.
Exactly. And the book is saying that we can apply that same principle to our adult relationships.
Interesting. So it's about focusing on what you can control.
Yeah. And creating those positive outcomes, even if the other person isn't necessarily on board yet.
I like that. So what else does the book talk about?
So another key concept is the idea of a brick wall between you.
A brick wall between you. That's a powerful image.
It is. And it's basically this metaphor for all of the unresolved hurts and disappointments that build up in a relationship over time.
Oh, so it's like all those little fights and arguments that never really got resolved.
Exactly. And the book says that these things accumulate and they create a barrier.
A literal wall?
Yeah, they block the flow of love and connection.
And so that feeling of like falling out of love.
The book says that's often a symptom of this wall, not the actual cause.
Okay, so the love might still be there, but it's buried under all those bricks.
Exactly. And that's why sometimes the typical relationship advice, like, just go on more dates.
Doesn't really work.
He doesn't, because it's not addressing the underlying issues.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
So the book introduces this tool called Face It, Own IT, and Solve IT.
Face It, Own IT, and Solve IT. It's a framework for starting to dismantle that wall brick by brick.
So you're actually addressing the root problems.
Yes, and it's about acknowledging the issues, taking responsibility for finding solutions, and then working together to resolve them.
Okay, that makes sense.
And a big part of this is what the book calls the importance of perspective shift.
Perspective shift. Tell me more about that.
So it's not about pretending to understand or just like forcing yourself to be okay with something.
Okay.
It's about actually gaining a deeper understanding of where the other person is coming from.
Right, because everyone has their own story.
Exactly. And the book uses this example of a woman named Diane who's described as being kind of bitchy.
Okay.
But then you find out that her mom just died.
Oh, wow.
And suddenly her behavior makes a lot more sense.
Right, you have compassion for her.
Exactly. And that's what the book is talking about. It's about seeing the whole picture.
Yeah, and relationship development is about helping us gain those missing pieces of information.
Those missing pieces so that we can actually have those genuine shifts in perspective.
And this also ties into the idea that we're all wired differently.
Yeah, we're not all the same.
Right, and the book talks about different processing speeds.
Some people think fast. Some people think slow.
Some people are more quick and impulsive. Others are more thoughtful and methodical.
And that can lead to misunderstandings.
It can, and I had this big realization when I was reading this book about my own son.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
He's definitely more of a chill processor.
Okay.
And I used to get so frustrated with him because I would ask him a question.
And you wouldn't answer right away.
He would just kind of stare at me.
And you're like, hello, anybody home?
But now I realize that he's just taking his time to process.
He's got a different pace.
He does. And once I understood that, our communication totally changed.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. And the book also talks about how masculine and feminine core processing can be a big source of conflict in relationships.
Right, because men and women often approach things very differently.
They do. And it's not about one being better than the other.
Right, it's just different.
It's just different wiring. And the book says that at least half of all marriage issues can be traced back to these differences in communication.
Wow. Half, that's a lot.
It is. So understanding those differences is huge.
Absolutely.
And one of the big ones is this difference between what the book calls processing conversations and solving conversations.
Oh, okay. What's the difference?
So women typically need to have a processing conversation first.
What do you
It
mean?
means they need to talk things out.
To process their emotion.
Exactly. They need to get those feelings out before they can even think about solutions.
Okay.
And men, on the other hand, tend to jump straight to a solving conversation.
They just want to fix it.
Yes, they're focused on logic and efficiency.
So they're like, okay, what's the problem? Let's find a solution.
And so you can see how this can lead to some major miscommunication.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Because the woman is thinking, I just need you to listen.
And the man is thinking, I just need to fix this.
And neither one of them is feeling heard or understood.
So how do we bridge that gap?
So that's where the book introduces the idea of a win-win approach.
Win-win approach. I like the sound of that.
It sounds good, right?
Yeah.
And it's different from just compromise.
Because compromise usually means someone's losing something.
Exactly. Whereas a win-win is an outcome where both people genuinely feel good about the solution.
Okay, so everyone's happy.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
And the book gives this tool called the order of alignment to help us achieve win-win solutions.
The order of alignment, what's that?
So it's a 3-step process.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is understanding each other's why.
The why behind their position.
Exactly. Why do they feel the way they do?
Yeah.
What are their underlying needs and motivations?
Okay, that's important.
It is, because once you understand the why, then you can move on to the what.
What needs to happen?
Exactly. And then finally, the how.
How are we going to make this happen?
Yes, and the book really emphasizes the importance of starting with the why.
Right, because if you don't understand each other's motivations, you're just talking past each other.
Exactly. And this helps us avoid what the book calls the invisible alignment predicament.
Invisible alignment predicament, what is that?
So this is basically the assumption that just because you love someone, you should automatically be on the same page about everything.
Oh, yeah, like parenting or household chores.
Exactly. And the book says that this is a really common trap that couples fall into.
And it leads to a lot of arguments.
It does, because we're trying to convince the other person that our way is the right way.
Instead of trying to understand their perspective.
And this ties into another concept that the book talks about, which is faulty relationship math.
Faulty relationship math. Tell me more.
So this is the idea that we often keep score in our relationships.
Like, who's doing more?
And the problem is we're measuring everything based on our own personal blueprint.
So what we consider a big gesture might not even register for the other person.
Exactly. And so we end up feeling unappreciated.
Because we're not speaking the same language.
And the book suggests that instead of focusing on scorekeeping, we should focus on understanding our own needs.
And taking responsibility for fulfilling them.
Yes, and that way we're not constantly relying on our partner to make us happy.
Okay, that's a good point.
And finally, the book talks about rebuilding trust.
Which is so important in any relationship.
It is. And the book emphasizes that trust isn't something you can just demand back.
You can't just say, I trust you now.
It doesn't work like that. It's a process.
A process of rebuilding.
Exactly. And it starts with rebuilding rapport.
Rapport. So like that feeling of connection and friendship.
Yes. And then alignment.
Which means?
Understanding and validating your partner's perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Okay, so it's about empathy.
And the book says that a crucial first step in rebuilding rapport is stopping those demand relationship behaviors.
Right, because those are just going to push your partner further away.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
This book is packed with information.
It is. And I think the biggest takeaway is that relationship development is a skill set.
It's something you can learn and practice.
And the really cool thing is that just one person changing their approach can make a huge difference.
So you don't have to wait for your partner to get on board.
You can start creating positive change today.
That's empowering.
It is. And I'm curious, as you've been listening, what's resonated most with you?
Yeah, what are some of those missing pieces that you've identified in your own life?
And if one person really can change a whole relationship dynamic,
what's one small change that you can make today to start that ripple effect?
That's something for all of us to think about.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the missing piece.
It's been a pleasure.
And keep those curious minds engaged.
Keep learning, keep growing.
We'll catch you next time on Book Decoded.
Bye, everyone.